It has been a minute since I have recorded a YouTube video or any video really, or shown my face because, well, 2023 has been crazy. If you were seeing my face for the first time and you're like, who is this girl? My name is Courtney. I am a author and divine feminine priestess. I had shared an old video last week, the one that I kind of had drudged up. I don't know how many times I've sat down to make this video, and felt the call to make a video discussing Awen, discussing creative alchemy and kind of my relationship with it and how to tap into it and all those sorts of things. So if you missed last week's video, I will leave a link, um, because it was really kind of an overview. Actually, it was a really great video on Caradwen, the book Caradwen by Christopher Hughes, and like a review of that book and how to tap into Awen. But I wanted to come on today and kind of give you an update for 2023 because it's been 2 years since I think I've posted anything. And that's kind of a reflection of the last cycle of my life and how it's gone, and which is crazy. And all I can think about, like, if I'm gonna make an excuse, like, it was the lunar nodes. Like, the lunar nodes in Taurus and Scorpio. I'm a Taurus rising sign, so if you're familiar with astrology, your rising sign is like basically the start of your first house, which is your house of identity, your house of self. And so it had me questioning a lot about who I am, who I want to be, how I want to be perceived. I'd shared, in last week's video, like I essentially stopped doing my priestess job, my writing job full time, and got a real job in the mundane world. And it was really hard for me to find balance between the two. And over the course of the last 2 years, like when I first started my job, I had this like desire, like I had to tell somebody like, hey, yes, I do this, but I also am a writer and priestess. Like, I left out the priestess part though, because there's clearly Scorpio. I mean, there was a lot of shame. I don't know if I was ready to come out of the priestess closet, for lack of a better word, because it's funny. I can easily come on here and on social media and tell you, hey, this is what I do, but there's some like um it still feels anonymous, I guess, in a way, because I don't know you personally, right? You don't know me personally. So when I'm in person with people, at my work, at my like parents from my kids' school, it's this weird, I don't know. Anyways, there's a lot of identity issues that I had to deal with personally before I could come back and do this work again. So there's a lot of, shadow work that had to be done with that. And it really kind of prevented me from doing anything like my personal business, like my writing, my priestessing became at a standstill, because it was like, how can I identify with this? How can I bring the spiritual into the mundane? How can I don't know. It was a hard way to balance. And anyways, I'm rambling, but I felt called to share, and I felt called to make this video because anybody who has a spiritual business, or but also a real job, and you're trying to find the balance between the two, I just want to say I see you. I get it. I've been there, and it can be really hard. And so the last 2 years, I kind of like, and I discussed this in the previous video, and I think about it now. I'm like, I compartmentalize like those two aspects of self, right? Like, here's real world Courtney, and here's like spiritual, like creative Courtney. And I essentially kind of tucked this Courtney into a box. I kind of tucked her away, shut her out. And you know what happened? I became really depressed. I had a lot of anxiety around my creative self. Um, I I had a really hard time. I really struggled with it because my spiritual practice was so ingrained in me. Like it was this daily living, breathing thing that that fed my soul essentially. And to not have that, to and I will say consciously, I consciously chose to detach that part of myself, like just to kind of like tuck her away. And I kept telling myself, like, oh, I'll come back to her. I'll come back to her. I need to find balance. I need to, just allow myself time to settle into this new role. Um, and it was really difficult. And I will tell you, I never found balance. Not really. The only thing that changed is these eclipses that we just had in October 2023, and the lunar nodes shifted. So now they're in Aries and Libra, and Aries is like this go-getter, light a fire under your butt, and like let's go, like fast-paced, like what are your passions? What drives you? What do you want to do? And get it done. It brings a lot of masculine energy, and there was this the eclipses essentially kicked my butt, but in the best way because here I am. Like, here I have been getting back into my spiritual practice, getting back into the things that I love because detaching that part of myself, um, like I said, I was not happy. Like it was really, really difficult. And for me, um, I am a Pisces sun and a Pisces North node. Like I need my spiritual practice, like in order for me to survive, in order for me to feel contentment and be happy and, to feel connected to everything. And to find that balance and peace in my life. And it's like so ironic because I literally wrote a book on developing a spiritual practice and I was not walking my walk, right? Um, and so I've really been coming back to this. This is Journey to Soul. If you're not familiar with this, and it's literally 21 days. It is like little pieces at a time because that's the hard part, right? It's like we make so many excuses to not do the things that we want that bring us joy, to not pursue our creative passions, to not start that business. We make so many excuses to, not connect with our spirituality. And believe me, I've made all of them in the last 2 years. So I get it. But it was literally like, I don't know, in the last month or so, it's like, okay, I'm calling myself out. Like, no more excuses because if you really, really want something, you will find the time. You will. And any creative, I feel like, knows that and has struggled with that or battled with that. Because it's like having this outlet. And I believe we are all creative. We are all creative in our own ways. We all have this creative energy that we tap into. Whether you identify yourself as a writer, artist, creative person, we all have creative energy, right? That is Shakti energy. That is Kundalini energy. That is Awen. Um, However you want to call it, right? That is all the same. It is the creative life force that flows through every single living thing. Flows through me, flows through you, flows through the trees, through the ocean, through life itself. And it it is so important, I think, for our human nature to create, right? I listened to this podcast recently and I couldn't even tell you the name of it, but essentially they were talking about like the myth of Adam and Eve and like this create the original like or the Christian creation story, right? And how essentially Adam and Eve like lived in paradise, they lived in Eden. Um, but when they took the fruit from the tree of knowledge and they were given this knowledge of creation and that is our blessing and our curse as human beings. And I thought about that and it's like there's some truth to that, regardless of what you know the Bible says or how you believe that story to go, and that it was like the devil like tempting Eve and the downfall of women. I don't know. It, it creation flows through all of us. And so, how do we get back to that? I guess that's the real question, because if you are feeling stagnant, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling uninspired. That was a huge excuse that I made myself. Like, I just don't feel inspired, and I don't want to create if I'm not feeling inspired. And that's bullshit. Like, and the thing is, like, because I've done so much work, right? Like, I've done a lot of shadow work. I've done a lot of healing in the last decade of my life. I was conscious of all of these patterns. Like, I knew exactly what I was doing, but I just wasn't ready to address it yet. But I was fully aware of all the excuses that I made, all of my patterns, all the self sabotage, all the self deprecation, the negative mindset. Like, I allowed myself to go into that deep, dark hole. And, I was aware of it. And I knew because I am a spiritual teacher. Like, I knew how to pull myself out of it, right? And what worked for me. And it was still hard. It was still really hard. So yeah, so that's where I've been. There's my update for you. Um, it's gonna be really weird if you just met or just came across this video for the first time, um, but yeah, let's talk about how we can get back to that creative space. Because I've been reflecting a lot on, okay, what did the last 2 years, what have they taught me? And it's really been, you know, can you function without a spiritual practice? And I have felt spiritual like my entire life. That is something that's always, of course, I was raised in a very like strict, modest Christian household. And, even when after I left the church, it was like this, I felt the need to find that divine connection, and created my own spiritual practice. And that led me to, the divine feminine and goddesses and mythology and all of that. But um, these last 2 years, it's like, it's been eye opening. And working with the public, because I work in healthcare, I see for lack of a better word, the lack of the divine, the lack of spiritual connection in the masses. And it's heartbreaking. I mean, witnessing people who are struggling and, battling depression and anxiety and illness and so many of these things. And it just makes me wonder, like, like if we all had a spiritual practice, if and that can look that's going to look different for everybody, right? Even a religious practice, but a way to spend time with the divine, a way to connect with the divine. Because here I have very recently lived both paths, right? Before I like disconnected that part of myself, like I was so in sync, so in flow, just radiating like joy and love. And I have never felt more in alignment. And the thing is, knowing that I had that and then choosing to not have that was crazy. But I truly believe everything happens for a reason. And, you know, that that's led me here, like to say, yes, I need the divine in my life. Yes, I need my spiritual practice. Yes, like, because if everyone had a spiritual practice, I really don't think we would be struggling with depression and anxiety in our culture as much as we do. That's just my opinion. I I think if more people learn to embody the divine, embody love, um, learned to listen to their soul's calling, right? Like their that creative energy, that Shakti energy. If we were more in tune with that and we learned how to work with that energy, I really don't I really don't think that we would have as much depression and anxiety in our culture. Because here I've been on the flip side of it and, not having my practice, and it literally felt, and I knew, I felt like this internal calling, like, you have to get back to this. Like, this is the only thing that will make you happy. But again, I made excuses for myself. I told myself, I don't have time. I don't feel inspired. I'm unmotivated. I'm tired. I'm fatigued. And you know why? Because I wasn't doing the one thing that I knew that would bring me joy. Self sabotage. And I am happy to call myself out on that. Like, I knew, and my poor husband like has listened to this rant for 2 years because it's constantly like, okay, by the way, I've started 5 books, five, and I've like hinted at it here and there, like on social media throughout the last 2 years. One, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to put it out on social media, then I have some accountability, right? Nobody's out there holding me accountable. I have to hold myself accountable. I'm the one that has to show up, sit in front of my computer, record the videos, sit in meditation, do the work, right? Do this spiritual practice, do the embodiment practices, sit at my altar. I'm the one that has to show up and write. If I want to finish a book, if you want to do that creative thing, you are the one that has to show up. We're getting some tough love today, but like, no more excuses. Like, there can't be any more excuses. Like, if so, if you are feeling that call, right? Like, I have this creative thing, like this project, this thing that I have been dreaming about, that I've been wanting to do it. Start right now. Right now, and like in the next 5 minutes. Like, what is one small step you can do? Whether it is applying for like a business license, whether it is just doing research and getting notes together and compiling, okay, here are the steps that I need to take. Nothing's going to happen overnight. And that is the creative process, right? Like, I will not write a book in one day. I can't. But I can sit down for 15 minutes every single day, after dinner or whatever it is. I can wake up, I can set my alarm 20 minutes earlier. I can sit down on my computer and I can write for 15 minutes. And some days that is 20 words, and some days it's 400. Whatever it is, it's the act of showing up. It's the act of showing up for yourself, for your creativity, for that. You have to show up in order for the divine. You showing up for yourself, for the things that you want to do, for the things that you want to create, is a signal to the universe, right? Saying, okay, she's ready. Let's go. Because what happened when I cut myself off from my spirituality is I closed the channel. I completely closed the channel. And the last few months, it's like, okay, like I'm slowly tuning back in. I'm slowly just like, let's work with this. Let's tap back into this, right? And I consider myself an archetypal embodiment coach. I wrote a book on feminine archetypes, right? And this was a huge part of my spiritual practice, was tuning in to each like thread of Shakti, each individual archetype and that energy, right? Um, and all this is just tuning into that creative energy, that life force energy, that kundalini, that Shakti energy. And if you want to tie it back to Herodwin, and last week's video, it's Awen. It is stepping into the river of Awen. Thanks to Christopher Hughes, that is how I imagine Awen now, is this endlessly flowing river. And just imagining, right, this beautiful flowing river filled with creative life force energy, and just imagining myself stepping into it, imagining it like just washing over my feet, right? Just dipping your toes in. What would it mean for you to just dip your toes in? There's this, I don't know, this random reel, right, that like showed up on my social media page, and sorry, I can't reference it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find it in the like chaos that is social media. um but you know, essentially she created this video and was talking about, her journey to weight loss, and again, she read this book and referenced it, and I couldn't even tell you what it was, but she was essentially saying, like, you will never be motivated. You will never be motivated. Motivation just doesn't come to you. It's not something like you can't just wait to be motivated, right? That's just an excuse to not do the thing that you want to do, right? Like me telling myself, "Oh, I'm uninspired." Woe's me, my creative self, like crazy. But that was the verbiage, the mentality. Motivation doesn't happen. It's kind of like this like false belief. It's this false ideal that like we've created, right? Like, oh, when I feel really passionate, when I feel really jazzed, like I'm gonna be motivated to do the thing. No, that's not how it works. Like, you have to show up. You just have to sit down and you have to force yourself to do it. You have to, tap into your masculine energy and to get the thing done, to act on it. And slowly over time, as you build habits, right? This is why I broke this down into 21 days, because it's just little pieces over time. And you just build on that, right? And it's consistency. It takes self-discipline, and it's just a matter of doing it. And then eventually, the more you do it, right? Right? As you create this habit, this new habit, this thing that you want to do, is the more you show up, that's where you continue. That's where the motivation comes in. Because then you start seeing results. Then you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Then you start seeing your vision coming to life. Then you start manifesting the thing that you want to manifest by showing up for it, by acting on it, by, you know, embodying the divine masculine, right? That's what it takes, is not waiting for inspiration to strike, not waiting for the motivation to do something. It is literally just sitting down in front of the thing that you want to do and just taking 5 minutes and saying, okay, I'm ready to start. And then doing it again the next day and the next day. And yes, some days you might not be able to get to it, but don't let that stop you. It's showing up again repeatedly, over and over and over for yourself. Showing up over and over for your practice, for your spirituality, for your soul's calling, right? Doing that thing that brings you joy. And not, beating yourself up if it doesn't happen one day. And not making excuses for yourself. I don't know how many times I've made like a to-do list. I don't know how many times I wrote my planner, I'm going to do this thing, and then never got around to it. Because I wasn't truly ready to begin, or I didn't have the self-discipline. I don't really know if this is how I expected this video to go, but I really felt called to just kind of share my story and my struggles. because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is. And, if you're on my email list, like I've been sharing this for sporadically for a while now, but it's really now is the time finally. I feel like as soon as the lunar node shifted, like the clouds started parting in my world. It's like, okay, now I'm ready again. And I've talked to a lot of creatives over the last 2 years, and I know I'm not the only one that has felt this way, right? Like the last 2 years have been difficult for a lot of people. But I really believe, excuse me, I really believe like coming back to a spiritual practice, right? Coming back and like tuning into that creative life force energy can really help us tune into the divine, tune into our spirit, our and kind of help us come back into alignment. But you got to show up, right? I think that's all I have for today. If this resonated with you, please let me know. If you've been struggling with creating something, um, you know, leave a comment down below. Let's hold each other accountable. Let's create a space where we can be like, okay, now is our time. Now we're gonna do it. Um, so yeah, I'm sending you all my love. If you want to stay in touch, subscribe to my email list. I've got a few goodies on there to share with you, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am fully intending on creating more of these. I don't know if it's going to be the same amount as I was 2 years ago, but you never know. You never know where the divine's going to take you. You never know. Once you tap in and you're aligned with that creative energy, you never know because you just got to flow with it sometimes. So, sending you all my love and